Thank you, and welcome for tuning in with us today at Mission San Juan Capistrano's presentation on conservation in your home. My name is Michelle Lawrence Adams, and I work as the Executive Director at the Mission. And we have, in the last 17 years, embarked on a huge effort to not only conserve the historic asset of the landmark and the architecture, but also the items within it. And so within our value system, we truly believe that their old places have purpose, and that the objects that we get to steward, are worth saving, caretaking, and sharing. And along our journey, we've had some really great people come in our path to help us out. And one of them is Mr. Scott Haskins, who's going to be speaking with you today. So I met Scott initially when we had discovered a 200-year-old painting hidden for 40 years within the Sarah Chapel, and we were faced with what to do with it. And in looking for the appropriate conservator to take on this amazing project and allow for the reveal of the Station 12 painting, we landed on Fine Art Conservation Lab out of Santa Barbara. And the reason why I like Scott and why I'm so excited to bring him here to you today, not only is he passionate, you can see him on Facebook, you can follow, he's got a tremendous spirit, super competent, but also his nature and how he approaches a project is conservative. And as stewards, we don't want to over improve our projects that we're working on, our artifacts and our objects. He doesn't reinterpret them or change them from the original intent of the artist. And so there's a lot I can say about him. You can see him on Facebook, you can read his biography, super accomplished. And Fine Art Conservation Lab for us was the first time we ever allowed a painting to leave the site. And we had all of our meetings on Skype, was before FaceTime, and we held all of our conservation updates by him showing me on camera what his status was. So he taught me a lot in that process, and I'm so excited to get off the screen now and hand it over to our good friend Scott Haskins, who's going to talk to you about how you can apply some of these principles at home. Thank you, Scott, for coming.
Thank you, Michelle. It's great to be with everyone. I really have a very strong affinity with Mission San Juan Capistrano. And your leadership is top drawer. And I really enjoy connecting with everybody, and really along all the different offices and all the people that connect. They're all in. You know,
well,
everybody's
thank
in
you for that.
Heart and soul and mind. And so it's you're well taken care of. Absolutely.
Well, I'm grateful to Jennifer and Jessica for organizing this. Jennifer, our museum registrar, and Jessica, a director. So we're going to hand it off to you, Scott. I'm going to tune out so we can focus on your message. Okay, and we finally pulled off a lecture from you. It's just a new era. So thanks for broadcasting.
This is going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I hope it's going to be entertaining. I don't want anybody to fall asleep, so we'll keep it lively. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to go down here. I think Jessica wants me to click on share screen. And I'm going to go up to my PowerPoint, and then I'm going to pull down a slideshow, I think, here. But hold on a second here. Oh, there we go, slideshow, and we're going to play this from the start. Bam. All right, so I'm often asked, how did I get into restoring artwork? How did I begin? And I was in college, finishing up my bachelor's degree, when I spoke with my department chairman. He knew that I loved science. I was minoring in geology, and he knew that I liked art. And so he said, well, why don't you go into art conservation? And I said, what's that? He says, well, it's the application of science to the preservation of art. Whoa, perfect. Inspiration and the perfect direction. I never had a second choice. That was the only thing that I went after and got involved with. And without getting into the long version of the story, it ended up that I got my master's degree in Italy, where I got actually the equivalent of a master's degree. It's a three-year program, and it was held in this 800-year-old monastery at the very top of a mountain. And outside, it's still from the, looks the same as it did in the 1600s. But inside, it is and this is the entrance that I walked in every morning for 3 years. And then this is the beginning of entering into one of the areas. So this is every day when I was at my easel and we were in painting or cleaning an art, I would look out of my window, and this is what I would see. The Po Valley with the lower lying fog out there, and we'd be up above the clouds in the sunshine. It was great. Anyway, the labs were all very modern, very well furnished, and with very, very competent people. In fact, one of the conservators that I worked with, he is a very famous art conservator working on murals, and he's worked in the jungles of Burma and in the pyramids of Egypt for UNESCO. And so I really got to work with some great people. And this was the first mural I ever worked on. It was dated about 1365. And they had me up on scaffolding, and I got my nose right next to this thing, and I went, oh my gosh, this is it. This is it. I have arrived. And I never looked back. This is exactly what I wanted to do. Interestingly, the mural, these are not African Americans or Negroes. These used to be white, and then with the atmospheric pollution, the lead-based pigment shifted and changed color, and they went black. So I thought that was, a very interesting beginning to my career. Anyway, this was another building where I worked, and they uncovered a walled-up library room, and in this library room were these murals that were on the ceiling in the vaults, and they were completely painted out, and everything was falling down, and the plaster was falling off. And so we began, like right from the, it was kind of like it was just like beyond reality for me. I came from Los Angeles, and here I am in Calvisano, Italy, saving hundreds and hundreds of years of art history. And not only that, but I don't have a picture of it, but one of the area where I was working was the only visual documentation of what that area looked like, what the buildings looked like during medieval times. And so not only was it artistic, but architecturally, it documented the city and the development of their culture. But this was really great. And this is the Santo Corpo di Cristo in Brescia, Italy. And if you walk inside, it's like, bam, the Sistine Chapel of Northern Italy. And if you look at the where the apse is, if you look just to the right before the archway, the mural on the bottom is the one that I was working on. And this was a cold church in the wintertime to be working on murals, but a magnificent experience. Anyway, this is kind of the, this is my beginning, and this is, of course, what lit my fire. And now I get to apply that enthusiasm and get to that passion as I work with your organization. And Michelle, of course, is all in and excited. And whenever you talk to her, you always end up loving exactly what she's talking about and wanting to do everything that she wants to do. I don't think she's ever not talked somebody into whatever she wants. I mean, all she has to do is smile at you, and you're ready to do whatever she tells you to do. So anyway, when I finished up my master's degree in Italy, I was headhunted, I guess, to begin a conservation laboratory at Brigham Young University, and also in connection with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Salt Lake City. They have a tremendous historical department that needed a painting conservator and a professional conservation. So we began working. One of the most amazing collections of art were these 7 by 13 foot paintings. All of these paintings used to be all sewn together, and they were wrapped around a big spool, two tubes, and then in a covered wagon, the artist would go from town to town, of course, pulled by horses or whatever, oxen, and then he would turn the spool like a film strip, and it would be a movie of the pioneers crossing the plains in the expansion period of the United States. And there were, I think, 24 of these panels that were, just astounding, amazing. and they were, of course, restored a bunch of times because being wound around the spool and rolled and unrolled, who knows how many times, they had to be repainted and whatever. But historically, the Whitney Museum called them the most important artistic find of the 20th century. And it was quite a project, really a tremendous documentation and artistic expression. He was a Danish immigrant into the United States, and you know, with all the immigration happening to the United States at that time, we got lucky and had someone document this expansion period. So also did work for the LDS Church, and this is their museum. And they, of course, have a very rich history throughout the Intermountain West. This is in a little out of the way little town called Manti. I mean, like, it was so weird. They would build these beautiful buildings out in the middle of a cow field, and the architecture, this this neo-Gothic architecture was just fabulous. So one of the there's a very rich heritage also of art during that time period. One of the artists, her name was Minerva Teichert, and she actually went to Paris went to France at the end of the 1800s and worked with Rodin and was really well connected, and then came back and painted here, and we've worked on lots and lots of her paintings over the years. We've done quite a bit of work for the state of Utah during that time and since then. In fact, they had an extreme amount of earthquake damage to their art collection when they had their earthquake in March, this last March. And tonight, after I get through with this this webinar with you, we leave and to drive to Salt Lake City because I have an appointment to help them sort out the damage of what happened, and I probably shouldn't talk about it. So anyway, we're still doing work for the state of Utah and go and have a lot of business, a lot of contacts there. Anyway, one of the places that I have enjoyed working the most from a historical point of view has been the Daughters of Utah Pioneers, or the International Pioneer Museum. And people ask me all the time, well, and this is completely relevant to your collection there at the mission, and that is, what is the best painting you've ever worked on? And, you know, so they're wanting me to talk about, you know, an $80 million Andy Warhol, or they're wanting me to talk about, you know, some, you know, a $35 million Monet of lilies. But to tell you the truth, some of the paintings that are so important historically really rev my engine to see things that are so important to the history of California. I'm going to show you a couple because we've worked on some really wonderful paintings in several of the missions of California. They're irreplaceable. You can't replace it. You can't buy them. And to have that responsibility and to have my fingerprints, well, my fingerprints aren't on the artwork because we don't leave our fingerprints, but you know what I mean, to have our touch and to have some connection with these extremely important, valuable historical works, for me is very, very thrilling, and I love it, and it's more thrilling actually than doing a pretty painting. Anyway, so the question though that I want to point out to you, and here this is something that I think that maybe you've all asked yourself before, is what is valuable art? If something is valuable, what does that mean? And there are three areas that I usually talk to people about. And one is, of course, financially valuable, and you can insure it for that amount of money. But something that is historically valuable is something that tells the story of a place or of an event. And then there's something that is emotionally valuable. And people often use the word priceless for this because you can't buy another picture of your great-grandfather. You can buy another portrait, but you can't buy a picture of your great-grandfather. You can't replace the love letters that your grandfather wrote to your grandmother if they were to get washed away in a flood. So there are things that are emotionally valuable and irreplaceable. And these three considerations need to be thought about. So that when somebody says, don't restore that thing, that's not worth anything. Well, it might not be worth a lot financially, but can you replace it? Is it going to be irreplaceable? Is it going to be super important for the next generation of people coming after you? And so so what is the value of your family's heritage? Huh? And so that's a rhetorical question, because obviously you can't really answer it quickly. But the word priceless gets thrown around a lot, and I'll give you the short story of this. It's kind of interesting. I get a phone call one day, and the guy says, "Hey, look, I have a priceless Renaissance Russian icon, and I need you to look at it for me and tell me if it's authentic." And I said, "Well," and we talked back and forth about all the different things that we have to do with microscopes and infrared and ultraviolet and pigment samples and that kind of thing. But I said, if I look at it and I might know something about it immediately, the minimum I'm going to charge you is $200 just to look at it. He goes, "Fine." He says, "But I think my attorney stole it." I said, "Well, I can't help you if I can't see it." So he says, "Well, I'll get a hold of you." So 3 weeks later, without a phone call, without any foreknowledge, a very early white Rolls Royce Silver Cloud pulls up in front of my business. The driver gets out with a hat on, in his uniform and his white gloves on, and he hands me a box. And he doesn't say anything. He just hands me the box, turns heel, gets back in the car, and drives away. And there's nothing in the box that says who this painting belongs to, which I'm showing you here on the screen. But looking at the painting, I can tell immediately that it's not priceless. I can tell you immediately that it's not Renaissance. And I can tell you immediately, just by experience, it isn't Russian. So about 3 weeks later, I get a phone call, and this guy, it's this fellow again that called me before. He's from Vegas. He says, "Did you get my painting?" And I said, "Oh, that's your painting. I didn't even know, because nobody told me anything. Nobody called. Nobody left a message." And I said, "But it's not priceless. It's not Renaissance, and it's not Russian." And he was and he says, "Well, how much do you think it's worth?" And I said, "Well, the two angel on the side are, added from the 1920s, probably." I said, "It might be worth $200. Dead quiet on the other end of the phone, dead quiet. And he says, and I said, "But, tell you what, I have, one of my clients is an international icon art dealer. I will show it to her. I will not prejudice her. I'll just show it to her and ask her what she thinks." He goes, "Okay, fine." So I took it over to Marlene, and I said, "Could you give me your opinion on this, just quickly, just verbally?" She said, "Sure." And so I say, "When do you think this was painted?" She goes, 1850. I said, "Yeah, I think that too." I said, where do you think it came from?" She says, "It kind of looks Italian." And I said, "Yeah, I think you're right." I said, "These guys were added in the 20s. I said, "How much do you think it's worth?" She says, $200. So we had kind of a laugh, and I called the fellow back, and I told him, and he was not happy. And he wouldn't pay my $200 billing, because I told him I'd charge him minimum $200. 6 months later, we talk on the phone, and he says, "Yeah, but it's only worth $200. I said, "Yeah, but you promised that you would pay me." And I said, "But tell you what, there's a good story with it now. I'll just keep your painting, and I'll use it, when I talk to people." And he says, "Okay, but if I see that at Christie's for $1 million, you're a dead man, and I've got contacts." I said, "No problem, no problem." So about 3 weeks later, I get another phone call, and it's a lady. And she says, "I hear you have my icon." I said, "Oh my gosh." And she says, "What's the story?" So I told her the story, just like I just told you. And she starts laughing and laughing her head off. And she drops the phone. And finally, she says, I divorced that blankety blank blank. And sometimes, people just take advantage of it. You have to draw a line in the sand. She says, "We spent over $100,000 in attorney's fees fighting over that icon." I went, "Oh my gosh." And she says, "So, obviously I lost the lawsuit. Sweet justice. Thank you very much. I love you. I love you. I love you." And I said, you're welcome. And so how much is something that you have worth? And there's a due diligence part of collecting and having collectibles and inheriting things and figuring it. Don't get into a big shouting match with things that need to be inherited or not. Get some professional information, get a second opinion, find out what you're getting involved with. And that is an important part. Due diligence is an important part of collecting or investing in art, whether you've got collectibles or you're inheriting them and reselling them. But this is a very, very good tip, okay? All right, so another thing is how we take care of things. And unfortunately, this irreplaceable family historical portrait was loaned to a community historical celebration where it fell off of the Pioneer tripod onto a Pioneer bedpost and put this Pioneer rip right across her face. And it, you know, just a heartbreak. I mean, it's you know, $2,500, $3,000 worth of work to bring her back to life and to make it disappear. And it could have been, and it shouldn't have ever left the house, and it shouldn't have ever, you know, something as fragile and as irreplaceable as this, and they're treating it, you know, like it's a, you know, a photograph that you print off of your printer at home. So not everything that you have needs to be treated equal. You need to give things preference, understand that some things are just too fragile and too dear and too irreplaceable to be cavalier about, okay? All right, so this is another example of getting some professional experience, professional opinion. You remember I told you about Minerva Teichert, and she painted this painting, and this was in a garage in Denver with the bicycles parked against it, and some water had flooded on it, and there were big drips across it. And they donated it to an organization and found out that they donated it. It was appraised for $1.2 million. And got the, they still donated it, and they got the deduction of $1.2 million. But the bicycles parked against it and stuff leaking on it. It's just mind-boggling. All right, so how to take care of your valuable things that you have is one of the reasons why you're here today. And it's a subject matter that I hold dear because obviously things that you have are going to, you're the caretaker for future generations, okay? And whether those future generations are your nieces and nephews, or whether you're going to donate something super important to some archives or an art collection, you're still the caretaker. And so I'm hoping that you'll just take one or two tips from my talk today and maybe be a little bit more aware. And some of the ways that you do this, it's not like you have to learn an encyclopedic amount of information. But you just need to recognize what problems look like and learn what not to do, learn what you can do easily, and get support or get help and get advice. And so that's what I'm here to do today, is to give you kind of a little nudge in the right direction, give you some help as your preservation coach, and give you a couple of suggestions that are going to help you feel good about yourself and to help you sleep easier. And so here we go. Okay, so this was a very, very valuable scrapbook that got left out on a driveway when it rained. And it wasn't just a couple of photographs from a vacation. They were baptismal, and graduation certificates and birth certificates. I mean, just all, just the carelessness was completely avoidable. Okay, so be aware of what's important and don't give it the opportunity to be peed on by the cat or to be, or just keep things, just do a little something to protect them a little bit better, okay? And you will have done something good, okay? So, oops, I'm sorry about that. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to skip that. But this is something, when you see water stains on documents or even on framed items, just be aware that this is not something that you just wipe off or that you can fix. You can't do this. This is not a do-it-yourself problem. So don't even stress about it. Don't stress about it. This will take a lot of money to wash out and bring back, and you're going to need professional help. And so you just need to get better information, but don't worry about fixing it yourself. Don't put this on your to-do list, okay? This is another thing. Paper from the 1800s generally was made with inferior materials. There are additives that were put into the paper pulp in order to process it through machines. And those today have caused browning and brittleness. And so there are a lot of certificates and books and pages and things made out of paper, or canvases, paintings from the 1800s usually are much more brittle than paintings that are 200 years older. And you also cannot fix this. Now you can get this repaired, you can get this preserved and protected, but this is not something that you can do to fix, okay? So don't stress about making this perfect, and just get some help and get a professional opinion about what to do. All right, this is if this weren't so sad, it would be funny. And that is, I wrote a book after the Northridge earthquake called How to Save Your Stuff from a Disaster. And in there, we talk about putting together a cheap, quick, but archival scrapbook. And after I wrote the book, my mom thought it would be cute to put together a scrapbook of my photos. And so she went out and bought a magnetic photo album. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. I wrote the book on taking care of your photos and putting together an archival scrapbook. And she went out and bought a magnetic photo album. Anyway, I guess a prophet is not honored in his own country. Is that the saying? I forget. Anyway, so what are some things that you can do yourself? For instance, one of the things that you can do yourself is that on woodwork, a little bit of shoe polish on the scuffs usually will help it look a little less scuffed, and is something that does not cause a permanent stain. Also, though, you need to, oops, sorry about that. You need to understand that some things are worth saving and some things are not, but you get an opinion. An old IKEA busted up piece of wood is probably not going to be, highly valued in the next generation or two, okay? So, the question I have, though, one of the things that I talk to people constantly about is, well, all I need to do is take a photocopy of it, and then I'm good. I make a copy, but that's not really the preservation of the original photograph. And there is some value to these original photos. Now, scanning things and getting things on the cloud, or getting a high-res image to your sister in Denver or in someplace else, when a hurricane hits or something and blows somebody to Oz, if they've got copies someplace else, then it's going to be a lifesaver. And this was never driven home more forcefully than when we had a huge wildfire in Santa Barbara, where I live. And the fifth home to be lost, maybe the third home, the fifth home to be lost in this wildfire were very good friends of ours. And they were super well insured and rebuilt their home to perfection and got it all dolled up. But here we are 30 years later after this wildfire, and she still laments, she still mourns having lost all the photos of her kids growing up. And she doesn't have any photos of kids growing up. Now, how many photos have you shot on your phone or digitally and you have no idea where they are? And you can't find them, and they're not findable. I mean, and then the old hard drive that you were using, of course, went kaput, and now you can't, and you haven't gotten your photos off that. There's generations of photos. Obviously, we're shooting 10 times more photos than we used to, but all those photos are unorganized and gone. And so there's got to be some awareness of this and some interest in help, and so that they'll be preserved. And the original photos that you have are of some value for future generations. They will last. Now, photoshopping them isn't really because we're talking about the original photos. So putting the original photos in an archival scrapbook, and so that they will last and be protected, is of value and is worth your effort. Okay, another thing that you need to be aware of are silverfish, or some places call them firebrats, and you can put bait out for these. But for instance, this particular label that used to be on the back of a painting is extremely important for the provenance or the background of the painting, and they were able to decipher some information off of this that made the painting worth 3 times more money, because it helped to identify it. So, you know, just taking your stuff, putting it in a cardboard box, and putting it in the outhouse out behind, you know, on the back property is not archival storage. All right. So one problem that again I see all the time is when artwork it falls off the wall, and this is just a very simple maintenance issue to check every once in a while. Find out if your attachments are loose, or your wire is frayed, or if, I can't tell you how many, I mean, I'm talking high-end homes where they have a valuable picture and it's hanging on for dear life with just a little finishing nail in the plaster. And so this is a recipe for disaster and for a loss of value. This $25,000 picture by Charles Rollo Peters, you know, once we repaired this rip, we made it disappear, it still had a bit of restoration. It was no longer virgin, so to speak. And so that's, you know, that there's, as curator of your collection of what you have, take a look at whether things are well attached to the wall. Very important. This fell off the wall when a sonic boom went over the house. And so it obviously was barely hanging on for life. All right, this is very interesting. This painting by Hinkle came into the lab to be cleaned, and it was in perfect condition. There wasn't a crack in the entire painting, okay? It was in perfect condition. And we cleaned it, and then we gave it back to the owner. And then about, I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years later, I went to visit this collector, lives in Laguna, and went to his house. And the painting on the wall is cracked to smithereens. And I said, how is that possible? It was in perfect, immaculate condition when we worked on it several years later. And I was just amazed at why this happened in such a short time. I mean, that looks like, this cracking looks like it should have happened over 100 years. And then I noticed that the painting was put on the wall right below the air conditioning and heating vent. For the house, in that part of the house. And so it had constant air blowing on it. First hot air and then cold air. And this cycle of hot air and cold air is an artificial aging process. Scientifically, if we're going to artificial age something and see how something yellows, or see how something fades, or see how adhesives expand and contract, we do this kind of thing artificially. Heat, cold, heat, cold, heat, cold. And in this case, right by, you know, this type of thing would happen if you had it next to a window that got heated up when the sun came up, or was colder in the evening. Or if you had it, you know, famous for this type of damage are things over fireplaces that, of course, get heated up, and then the fireplace isn't used and they're cold because there's a draft there. So just be aware that wide varying heat and cold or humidity is really bad for all of your artwork, including antiques and other things. Okay, so one thing that you need to be aware of is that the prints that you print, the photos that you print on your printer at home are not archival. They'll run in water, they'll fade like crazy, and unless the paper is acid-free, it's going to yellow. And so these are not appropriate for long-term expectations, okay? Just so you know. All right, so this was done for the state of Utah, and this portrait, as you can see, is life-size, actually. And it was put into storage, and then, I don't know, it looks like the curator fell through the painting. What happened was it was so brittle that it just got leaned on, and then it got leaned on some more and leaned on some more, and just be aware of the things that you have under your care. If they're fragile, if they need special attention, and they're not just something to throw in the back room and with I don't know, with the extra toys that your kids aren't using anymore. All right. So, and then of course, not only, I mean, this is what it looked like on the right-hand side. You can see what it looked like when we got through doing the restoration work, but still, they had to come up with, thousands of dollars to put it back together, and it could have easily been avoided. And so one of the things that we get into the lab every once in a while, and I always look at this kind of thing with a little bit of a grin or a laugh, and that is that pets, house pets, and heirlooms do not mix. Okay, and so I've got, at any given time, I can have 2 or 3 things in the house that have been leaned on by a Labrador, or have been peed on by a cat, or have been scratched by some other pet. And so, I expected to have this slide up in a completely different place. And so anyway, the idea is of making sure that you isolate your pets from your collectibles and your antiques. And so we're going to talk more about that here in just a second. And let's see, how am I doing on time? It's about, we're moving along. Okay, I'm gonna, so one of the things that I've done to help people is in writing, I have an offer for you today. And that is that this book is kind of my Hollywood production. It's available only in digital form. And it has 35 videos embedded into this digital. So if you go to if you go to collectioncaretips.com and you put in just your first name and your email address, you can download this book onto your computer. Okay, collectioncaretips.com, and it is it's available to you at no cost because of my association with the mission. And there are lots and lots and lots and lots of great tips and stories in here that you'll love. And like I said, it's there's 35 videos embedded in it. And it's really, I think, a great help, and will give you lots of suggestions for taking care of your stuff, okay? So collectioncaretips.com, 35 videos. Also, I send out preservation tips to people, and they always get rave reviews. We're not sending out, like sales stuff for high heels and a new bumper for your car. It's just a preservation tip type thing. And if you don't need it, don't like it, not sensitive to it, hit delete. But as your authoritative expert and your preservation coach, I think it's a good idea that I remind you every once in a while that you're the curator of your collection, and that you've got a book, collectioncaretips.com, that is worth looking into every once in a while. All right, so what should you do next? Well, download the free book, of course, and I'll send you some preservation tips. And the idea of a family history grab-and-go kit. We do live in earthquake country, and we have wildfires. And so if you had to leave, what would you really cry about if it got blown away or got burnt up? What would you really hate to lose? And so there are some copies of things, for ownership, but also family history items that you should make copies of and have someplace else, so that if you're blown to Oz, that you'll always have a copy of. Okay. And so this, and there's more about this in the book, collectioncaretips.com. All right, so the one thing that you can see here in the picture, one thing that living in earthquake country, here is a tip that you'll read about in the book, collectioncaretips.com. But museum wax is a product that is an anchoring wax. It's kind of sticky. It's not museum putty, and it's not museum gel, it's museum wax. And museum putty kind of leaves a little bit of an oily residue, and it's better for like big ceramics. But this is good for anchoring down your crystal and your ceramics and your glass collectibles and those kinds of things, so that if there's an earthquake or there's a cat walking along the ledge in your house and knocking stuff off, that this will hold things down. If you go onto YouTube and you look up museum wax with my name, Scott Haskins, there are several videos that will show you how to use this, okay? And you can buy this at Home Depot. So, and if you can't find it at Home Depot, send me an email and I'll send you some. Anyway, that is the end of the presentation. I've given you lots and lots of tips about taking care of your stuff. I hope none of you have fallen asleep, and that you've found something here that you enjoy. Oh, got a couple of questions here for you. What is your most treasured family heirloom? Oh, good question. Good question to know what you can't live without in the future. Okay, so there's a good question, a nice poll. And
a lot of these people are answering old photos, Scott.
Yeah, that's the old photos. The original photos I think there's a special vibe with old photos. I love them. And
Scott,
there was another.
have a few questions if you're ready to answer questions while people are doing the poll.
I am. How do I get out of the full? Do you want me to get out of this full?
It's up to you, one way or the other.
Okay. Well, anyway, go ahead. What are the questions?
All right. So the first question for you is, what is the most interesting heirloom that you have worked on? It's a broad question.
Yeah. Well, probably the most expensive thing was an $80 million painting by Andy Warhol. I've worked on several of the, several, I'd say a couple dozen paintings by important French Impressionists. But as I said before, I really love historical things. One of the things that I felt most honored to work on was the painting that was personally commissioned by Father Serra to hang over his tomb in the Carmel Mission. And I was just enraptured by the history behind it, and the thought that went into it, and the devotion, and the dedication that it represented. And so that's remained something that's been an important thing that we had. That might be my most interesting item is the painting that hangs over Father Serra's tomb in the Carmel.
That's great. That's amazing. Okay, we have 2 more questions for you. So the next one asks, if my family had a painting hanging in a bathroom for years, do I need to worry about mold damage?
Not all bathrooms are made the same. I actually hung a couple paintings in my bathroom just to see what would happen. And when we take a shower, we have enough circulation of air in our room, in our bathroom, that there's no condensation that ever gets on them. But if you don't have good ventilation and good air movement in your bathroom, then you will grow mold on your artwork. And especially if it has glass on it and it traps humidity inside. So that would obviously not be good for whatever you're hanging in there. The bathroom's maybe a little bit better place for a reproduction and not the original artwork.
Good answer. That's great. Okay, so the last question that we have is, this person says, I've heard of something called archival quality paper. What is it, and what would it be useful for?
So archival quality paper can be purchased so much more easily today than ever before. In fact, I think that almost all the paper that you buy when you go to Staples or Office Max is acid-free. But there's the mistake that acid-free paper is archival, because it's not really. There is paper that is created, the day it's created, it's acid-free, but then in a month, it turns acidic a little bit. And so there's another term that needs to be connected with acid-free, and it's called buffered. Acid-free buffered. And if it's buffered, that means that they've left a residual, kind of a cold capsule, a time release in the paper, so that it combats any future acid that would like to develop, maybe because it's transferred from something else or whatever. But acid-free buffered paper is archival. Now, it's interesting that the Library of Congress, which sets the standards for what we're talking about, says that that if you want to, let's say, do an archival photocopy, that it's got to be on archival buffered paper, but it's also got to be printed with a laser writer. And that laser writer has to be obviously be be working properly, so that it's fixed. Now, if you want to get really technical, there's some buffered paper that only leaves behind a residual of 1% or 1.5% of this buffering in the paper. If you really want to get technical and sound super intelligent when you talk to your paper seller, ask them what is the percentage of buffering in your paper. And the Library of Congress says that you should have 3.5% buffer in your acid-free paper to keep it alkaline and non-acidic for generations to come.
That was a great explanation. Thank you. Very technical.
More than you wanted to know.
No, that's perfect. I think that's wonderful. So I know Michelle will want to say a few words before you leave, but I wanted to let you know, I'm not sure if you can see, somebody named Angie Maxfield says that you have restored some paintings for her, and she's been very pleased with it. So I just wanted to let you know that she said that on here.
That's nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So if Michelle is ready to say a little something, can we start your video, Michelle?
Oh, am I not? Do I do that? Let's see. There we go. Let me do that myself. Let's see. There we go. There we go. Well, Scott, as always, it's hard to do a presentation in front of no audience to see, and you did a great job. I think that's a challenge. And we were all listening, and of course you convey such passion for everything. One of the things I really admire and respect about you, I know you're, I think, a member of Latter-day Saints,
yes.
Faith tradition, and that's something I know because you're on Facebook. Mm-hmm. But you bring such a reverence to the Catholic liturgical objects and items, and I just so appreciate that, because really history, like you say, it belongs to all of us regardless of your faith point of view.
You know, it's not just that it's historical, but it means something to people. Yeah. There's a reverence for it, and if you're going to respect other people, whether they're Christian or they're some other religion, everyone's faith and everyone's beliefs, I believe, need to be respected as people need to be respected and loved. So it's a way of life for me, and you get maximum respect and dedication to you. And
I know you have worked on much bigger things, but to cite that one as one of your personal favorites. I remember when the Santa Barbara flood happened, and all these people with their collections were reaching out to you saying, what do we do? We've got mud and fire, and to know how many expensive and priceless objects you've worked on, it just conveys why we picked you to do the conservation of Station 12, which for most of you, if you haven't seen it, is a big painting. I would say it's like by 9x6, or it's big. And in the collection of the stations of the painting, stations of the cross painting collection are small. They're more like 12 or 14 by 24 at the most. And this is the one painting that doesn't match the collection, and it was hidden under another large painting.
And technologically, that was a tough, there were some really interesting problems to resolve. So that was, for us, it was a really interesting project too. It wasn't just more of the same.
Just getting it out of the building, because it's in a historic building that's 200.
You remember how much rat poop came out of the back of that when we
so much historic rat, and we found the old newspaper from the 1920s behind the painting. And what I know to be true as a preservationist is that every project you ever work on always has a surprise. And so the great thing about your experience is you have the wisdom to anticipate there'll be a surprise, and that you're going to have to adjust what you thought would be the right treatment as you learn more about the object. And that's why we picked you to do the Station 12 painting, which is priceless to the missions collection of San Juan. And just grateful to have your time today for free. You're donating that. I want everyone to know. And I hope everybody buys your book, and we'll put it in our store. That's your shameless plug. That's my job. But I just really appreciate the relationship.
The book that I offered you guys was free.
There you go. It's all free.
Free. So now get everybody to download it.
And I just want to say, I put the link in the chat box if anybody is interested in finding it there.
Good.
Right. Well, again, it's great to see you. I'm glad you're holding up really well, like we're all trying to do. When we get back to the business, right now we're raising money just to try to stay open 4 days a week. So we've shifted our focus to survival. But once we get through this phase, we'll be getting back to preservation. And we hope
if I can help you fundraise, I'm more than happy to be a part of the team.
Oh, you may get an email from me. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in and being a part of the Mission San Capistrano program here. We're grateful to have Scott and Jennifer and Jessica on our team and the staff. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah,
all right. Bye, con Dios.
All right. Bye-bye.